Hello, everyone. Wherever you are in the world, you are very welcome to this online session hosted by the Nursing Now Challenge and supported by the World Innovation Summit for Health. My name is Nick Bradshaw. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Outreach at the World Innovation Summit for Health, otherwise known as WISH. And it's my pleasure to have the opportunity to introduce this event, which is held as part of the latest Nursing Now Challenge Global Solutions Initiative, focusing today on navigating nursing's digital landscape. We'll be hearing from some great speakers today. But first, a very quick reminder of the initiative itself, the thing that's bringing us all together today, albeit virtually. Now Challenge Global Solutions Initiative was launched last year to provide a platform for nurses and midwives to showcase their innovative ideas and leadership skills. By submitting a solution to an NNCGSI challenge, easy for me to say, you join a community of nursing and midwifery leaders driven to make real positive change to improve care and address ongoing global health challenges. Now, details of how to submit a challenge can be found at nursingnow.org, nursingnow.org. But don't go there yet, but essentially you'll be expected to produce a short but detailed concept note outlining a problem and suggesting a solution to that problem. You can enter as an individual or as part of a small team. This summer, in the Northern Hemisphere summer, 2 challenges are running, focusing on the role of nurses and midwives in addressing climate change, and then in getting the most out of developments in the digital landscape. My organization, WISH, is delighted to be sponsoring these 2 challenges, offering $1,000 to the winners to help them develop their ideas, as well as the opportunity to present their ideas at WISH 2022 in Doha, Qatar, which is WISH's next global gathering of healthcare leaders, practitioners, researchers, and innovators. Today's session is going to be focusing particularly on the role that nurses can play in making digital technology work for them, rather than add complexity to an already demanding profession. If you want to take part in today's challenge, then you'll need to think of an innovative approach to an aspect of nursing that uses at least one digital technology to improve patient-centered care. Again, details are on nursingnow.org, but don't head over to the website just yet, because we've got a great session to keep you engaged and intrigued today. Across today's session, we'll hear from a range of speakers, including experts who between them will be highlighting the challenges that are part of efforts to navigate the ever-changing digital landscape, specifically those challenges where nurses can be part of the solution. We'll be hearing from a panel of young nurses, which is always great, and we'll also hear from an entrepreneur who has built up a successful business herself right at the intersection of nursing and digital technology. Later in this session, we'll be putting some questions to today's speakers, which we want to come from you, the audience. So please do use the Q&A function if there's anything you'd like to ask. That's the Q&A function rather than the chat function. But please go ahead and chat away in the chat function too. We've 5 speakers today, each offering some words that we hope will inspire you, the audience, into action. So we've got limited time, a lot to get through. So that's plenty of me speaking. Let's hear from our first speaker, Dr. Richard Bruth, RN. Richard is an associate professor at the Arthur Labatt Family School of Nursing at Western University, and he joins us today from Canada. Richard is the lead author of a recent paper for the BMJ commissioned by WISH titled How the Nursing Profession Should Adapt for a Digital Future. And that paper is going to form the basis of his presentation today. Thanks for being with us, Richard. So over to you.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the invitation and the time to speak this morning, including some of the individuals and the young leaders I saw who were a part of the last session. So it's nice to connect again. I'm going to throw my screen up here and I'll start the presentation. And over the next 10 minutes or so, I will run through a bit of the paper and the ideas that we have forthcoming from it. So in terms of speaking about a future and a digital future for nursing, Where do we go with that? How do we see the future when the future hasn't quite occurred yet? Because, you know, if we could predict the future, it would be way easier in a number of different dimensions from our profession. But the future is one of those elusive things where we really need to start to conceptualize what could be and then start to aim in terms of strategy towards it. So if you asked pretty much anyone back in the late 90s, what you use the internet for, well, people would tell you to not meet people from the internet and to not get in strangers' cars. And then roughly not even 20 years later, we have technology on a lot of people's cell phones right now, where you push a button and some stranger from the internet comes up and you potentially get in the car. And they're speaking about the model of economy, that is the Uber models that they occur, whether it be Lyft and other kind of microtransactions that occur in society that we just take for granted now. But to keep in mind that this cultural revolution, this shift in mindset has occurred in such a rapid and exponential sense that things that were inconceivable, not even the incomprehensible actions 20 years ago now occur on a daily basis. And we live amongst this ecosystem. And I appreciate there's a continuum and there's definitely a context, resource rich and resource kind of developing nations. But this is the world that we live in right now, where it's saturated with technology, where you can have people who are eccentric billionaires who fling their car into space because they can on their own spaceship. Like, it's just an astronomical way that we have changed over the last 20 or 30 years. And a lot of it has been driven by data and technology. That's where I really want to start the basis of this presentation. We have all started to live through and are currently living through probably one of the most important time periods in nursing's recent history, where we are coming hopefully on the flip side of a global pandemic that has demonstrated the value of nursing in numerous and different ways. And I want to use this as the basis to begin the deconstruction of the BMJ paper we wrote, because this paper was largely written during the second wave in Canada of the pandemic, which was a very significant pandemic wave in Canada. My colleague Gillian Strodwick, Susan McBride, Siobhan O'Connor, and Ana Lopez, we pulled together a number of insights that we thought were important for the time period of 2021 and beyond, to really kind of give a forecast on what we thought would be important for the profession in all its senses, from a global interconnected healthcare practitioner perspective, to move forward into the future. And now that was a kind of a hard task, because there is a lot of variation in the profession across the world. So we wanted to try to give as much flexibility to the insights as possible, appreciating that some of our suggestions are dependent on your context and your regions. I'm going to quickly go through the key messages, and I'm going to give you some images along with it, because I have a few more minutes in my last presentation last time to build into it. So the first topic is, we really need to think about the technologies that we have and the benefits and the challenges that currently exist. We have lots of success with technology in the last 20 or 30 years in healthcare, and especially within nursing. We have entire lineages of healthcare technology and nursing informatics research, which I do not want to dismiss or diminish in terms of its value. But we still have significant challenges. We have challenges in terms of access, in terms of equity to technology, and just in terms of basic usability of technology. We are still using technology that looks like glorified spreadsheets in 2021, which is, it shouldn't be. We should have way more usable technology. So we have lots of issues currently and challenges that we can overcome, because they're no longer technology issues. They're policy and generally a lot of resource issues. So we need to think about the value that we've created in the last 20 or 30 years and how we can further refine that from our profession to really amplify our profession and to move it into the future. The other topic that was really important in the BMJ paper is building leadership. And I can see from the individuals we have on the call here, who I've spoken with about a month ago, we have lots of young leaders and leaders currently in the domain that are going to take nursing into the digital future. I feel very confident that this is something that is going to occur because of current climate and some of the slides I showed you previously, where we live in a data and technology saturated environment, pretty much globally right now. So think about roles, whether they be the big leadership, big L, or the small L leadership. These are the roles that nursing needs to entertain. And if it doesn't involve some sort of digital process, not that we should be driven exclusively by technology, but if you're thinking of nursing process and it doesn't involve something that is enabling through technology and amplifying, then we really need to rethink that. And that's going to be moving into the future. Everything moving into the future is going to have a touch point with something digital. And we need leadership in all domains, from the C levels and the V levels in the institutions, all the way down to our front line and our practicing individuals and the grassroots, big and small L leadership. The topic that is probably the most pronounced in the BMJ paper is the discussion of emergent technology like artificial intelligence and automation. These are the topics that keep me up at night, to be perfectly honest. And we saw some slides of it already in passing. These are the topics that are going to fundamentally change our profession for good or bad. And I say that in both ways. They have lots of amplification, but they also have lots of potential to augment us in ways that we may not be happy with. So we are really good in nursing here on the bottom left quadrant here. Human labor and the skills and the knowledge that goes with what we do as nurses has been really refined since the days of nursing, all our nursing theory, all our nursing practice. We have really focused on human labor, human tasks, and human cognition and knowledge that goes around our nursing practice. We have new technology that has come up that has grown in the last 20 years that is going to start to compete with our traditional way of doing things in terms of robotic process optimization and automation, and also cognitive technologies like artificial intelligence. Now, when we think of robots, we think of like the Terminator robots and things we see in movies. It's not that. It's basic automation of tasks and knowledge that is going to be amplified by cognitive technologies like machine learning and artificial intelligence to amplify into a digital labor environment. And we're already seeing different industries that are doing this. The manufacturing industry, a lot of the knowledge industries, essentially the entire stock markets and financial world are run by algorithms that are automating cognitive processes. So are we susceptible to this? Absolutely. We need to rethink what our care processes are going to look like in the future in a digital labor environment, where it's not just our human knowledge and human tasks that are going to be valued. It's how we utilize and augment ourselves through other technologies that can amplify our role, which leads us to re-envisioning the nurse-client relationships. You can see here, if technology is going to be an intermediary or some sort of actor that's working with us to amplify us, that is going to change the nurse-client relationship. And we need to start thinking about what that's going to look like, because we currently live in a world like this. Virtually every place in the world right now, and this is a slide from 10 years ago from Facebook. This is 10 million Facebook friends on Facebook and their interconnectedness from 10 years ago. And there's just under 2 billion active registered users on Facebook each week. Facebook is a monstrous network when you think of it. Like when a good percentage of the world logs on each week, we need to rethink what our nurse-client relationship looks like in a world like this. Because when this becomes automated and augmented through artificial intelligence, which it already is starting to become, because if you've been on social media, you've already experienced automation and artificial intelligence and its impact. How healthcare processes are going to look like in a world like this, where it's now the global world, not just the world where you can walk to in terms of healthcare, is something that we have not completely grasped as professionals. And that comes down to kind of the latter point of evolving our digital practice. What is a digital practice going to look like? And this is a slide from a think tank paper from KPMG from a couple of years ago, when we have all this various stuff that has come and grown up. And when I started showing this slide about 2 or 3 years ago, it was like, okay, that stuff doesn't exist. But most of the stuff now actually sort of exists in certain places. So healthcare on demand and personalized healthcare, where you use your genomics to help predict things and to create better strategies for healthcare. We have all the treatment and innovation in the hybrid workforce. So all the implants, the 3D printable stuff, virtual reality, I'm doing some of that here. AI, the relationship between AIs and human, and medical autonomous drones. Words that 5-10 years ago were told to me that would, like, Richard, what are you talking about? But here we are. And in the city of Toronto here in Canada, we have drones driving down the street delivering food. Like drones driving down the street. I'm fairly certain that if you live in a Western country, you'll have a drone deliver you a package in the next 10 years. We're just kind of on that trajectory. So we need to really remain ahead of the curve, because we're kind of subtly falling behind the curve in many respects. Not that we should be driven by technology, but we need to think about its relationship with us as practitioners to amplify our roles in nursing, whatever that might look like. Because if we don't, we won't be able to break through the clouds. We'll remain under the clouds and not be able to see forth into the future, which is kind of where we need to go. And the future is going to be digital. It is already baked into our trajectory. How we manage that and how we lead that, and I say lead that from a leadership perspective, is going to be very important. And I'm very, very excited, and I am very hopeful that the individuals and the young leaders on this call will take up that message and change nursing for the better moving into the future for both nurses, the profession, and our clients. So I'll end there. Happy to take any messages in the future. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to leave, well, I suppose that's there. People can take a screen grab of that, or they can, this session, by the way, is being recorded, so it will be available on YouTube, so people can go back and get information on different people who are speaking today. But Richard, always great to hear from you, and loads of food for thought there, which is exactly what we wanted to get this session going today. So thank you so much, and I do recommend people hunt down that paper on the BMJ and read what Richard and his colleagues had to say. So moving on swiftly from Canada to England to Hannah. So we're going to hear now from Hannah Jackson, who is a registered nurse with the Nottingham University Hospitals NHS Trust in Northern English Midlands. Hannah, her short talk takes the title, Nursing's Digital Era, Ensuring No Nurse is Left on Mute. The irony now if Hannah is on mute. Hannah will be talking about how we make sure that the advent of digital nursing doesn't create hierarchical inequalities in nursing. And she recently had an article published in Nursing Times on this topic, a link to which will hopefully be added into the chat by another Hannah from Nursing Now, or other people from the Nursing Now team. But hopefully, Hannah, you are not on mute, and the virtual room is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just get my share my screen and share my PowerPoint. And I'm really hoping that everyone's able to see that. So it's really nice to meet everybody. So as Nick's just said, I'm talking about nursing's digital era, ensuring no nurse is left on mute. So thanks, Dr. Booth. That was a really good insight as to what's happening vastly, and what I'm thinking about is something really quite nuanced and quite small around digital etiquette and digital enablement at the point of care. So thinking about staff nurses whose job might not be about frequenting meetings and living in that corporate world within nursing. So we have had a digital revolution. It is coming, it is happening. And I would argue that this pandemic has actually expedited that. We've had to think over this last year about innovative approaches to the delivery of patient care, innovative approaches to communication, that is both with patients and with each other. So our colleagues, some of our colleagues have been working from home, some of our colleagues have been working in acute care, and we've had to think about how we can communicate. And what that has meant is that a lot of the meetings are being conducted on digital platforms, such as this one and others. And that has meant that there is a whole new world of digital etiquette that has been born. And for those who frequent meetings, who perhaps work in a more corporate side of nursing, have been part of that building of that digital etiquette. And as you know, it's about coming into a meeting and potentially being on mute and alerting the chairperson that you want to share your voice by raising your hand virtually. But for all of our colleagues, that etiquette is not innate knowledge. And that means that for some of our colleagues, they're being left out and their voice is absent and not heard. And this comes, and we're talking here about digital skills, digital prowess, and digital etiquette. So who, what, and why? So my thoughts at the moment are about the point of care staff. So the staff who do not use these platforms frequently, who are not part of that building of that digital etiquette, who are using technology in practice but might not be part of the understanding as to what that technology means beyond record keeping. And Dr. Booth actually talked about that and the advances that technology is bringing. So when I talk about digital prowess, I'm talking about those skills that once we have and once we hold, actually it means that we're able to have that cultural capital and engage in lots of different meetings. However, accessing that etiquette is actually quite challenging if you were not part of it from the beginning. And that might result in an absence or a reticence to engage in meetings. And these meetings are important because this is where decisions are made about patient care and about the care delivery that is happening at that point of care. And therefore, our staff nurses, our frontline staff who hold a significant amount of expertise in the care that they deliver will be absent from these decision-making platforms. And we talk a lot about narrowing that inequality, narrowing that divide between ward to board. And my concern at the moment is that we're not focusing enough on how we can digitally enable our point of care staff so that their voices are heard and they are not absent from these meetings. And so my recommendations for practice at the moment are to consider who is absent. So we are all leaders, and when we go into these meetings, we're able to look at who might be absent and why that might be beyond that they were not able to attend. And it might be that their lack of confidence, that lack of cultural capital, incites that reticence to join. It's about considering a dialogue around what meeting etiquette is. So when we're starting these meetings, to just point out that one can blur their background, and that means that people are able to then be more private when they are presenting, because that might be a reason why people don't want to engage on these platforms. It's also about acknowledging that not everybody understands or has this innate knowledge that when we enter meetings that we go on mute and that we do raise our hands, so enabling our colleagues to know to do that. And more systemically, it's about a scoping exercise about this digital prowess in organisations. So what are the skills at the point of care? Because beyond attending meetings and beyond losing that voice of the expert point of care staff, it is about nurses being able to understand what this technology means going forward, because we are speeding into this digital age, and it's about looking in that rearview mirror and seeing who we might be leaving behind as we speed forward and bringing everybody alongside with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. You mentioned ward to board. Let's hope the importance of people on the front line on the wards are given the full attention they deserve. Really interesting to point out the way things have changed really only in the last year or so. But really good insights there to ponder, to think about as we look at the different aspects of how digital technologies have become part of the nursing job, the nursing world. So thanks so much, Hannah. Up next is Karen West, who is Head of Customer Knowledge at Perfect Ward. She's going to give us some information about her company and specifically the important role of nurse-driven technology in patient-centered care, something vitally important. Karen, the room is yours.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thanks, Andrea, for sharing that. So it's really a great opportunity to speak to you about this, and it's really nice that Hannah's almost, I feel, given me a bit of a warm-up act, talking about the importance of not having nurses on mute, because our app is an app that we developed to basically conduct smart quality-based inspections, and then that is predominantly done by nurses. So we very much wanted not to put nurses on mute. In fact, we really encouraged their participation in the development of this. So inspections are used by healthcare providers to understand their quality performance and be able to understand where their areas of risk are. And I thought, because this is so much an app that is used and developed by nurses and for nurses, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the idea of how Perfect Ward came about. Next slide, please. So we didn't start off by being a software developer company. We actually started off being a healthcare consultancy business. And it was whilst we were actually doing some specialty reviews at an acute trust that we noticed that staff around the hospital were preparing for their regulator visits. So they have visits every several months or so in the UK by the Care Quality Commission to assess them on their performance and quality of care. And we noticed that those that were doing the reviews, predominantly nurses, were doing them in an incredibly manual way. This actually, you can see on the screen here on the left-hand side, is a lovely form that staff would be going around and filling in as they observed the practice going on or the environment of care that patients were in. So this took up a huge amount of time. And then some poor person had to put all this information into a PC. And quite often it would take maybe days or even, I've heard, weeks or months from having that review to assess quality, getting back to frontline nurses. So you can imagine what happens if they don't understand, they're not picking up on the issues. It may be months before you recognize that there's a risk that you needed to address. It also meant that there was a real lack of transparency. So if you have a theme, a risk that's going throughout the whole organization, you need to put it into some form. You can see on the right-hand side a lovely spreadsheet, which someone had to try and pull out those key messages to say, actually, this is something that may be the whole organization-wide. So quite a difficult process. It was very much seen as a job burden for the nurses. That's not what they joined the profession for. So the idea about Perfect Ward was really to replace all of this manual stuff with an app. Next slide, please. So we designed Perfect Ward, walking the wards, and literally walking the wards with the nurses to really understand their processes and get their feedback at every stage of the design so that the product not only met their requirements, but also made their lives easier. So many organizations, you often see that they've purchased software, but it's not being used to its full potential. And in our mind, we wanted to really create as few hurdles as possible so nurses are able to use the app, and we made it incredibly intuitive. In the early stages, I was doing a lot of the training, and I found that most of the time people didn't require training at all. So that was a great reassurance that it was incredibly easy to use. It also takes away all of the admin, and we reckon it saves staff probably about half the time it used to take them to do these reviews. So it enables them to free up that time so they can get on either with addressing some of the issues or actually caring for patients. And many UK organisations have a centrally managed auditing review function. And as I say, people very much felt that they were feeding the sort of management reporting machine. It was not something that was a tool for themselves. So alongside our training program, we developed an implementation program that involved staff at all levels, every step of the way. So it became a tool that was very much valued by them. They helped design it. They helped decide on the content that we put into the tool. So that they found that this was a tool that actually helped them do their job. It made their job easier. And many of the features that we designed into the tool were really to support this inclusive use of quality. So live reporting, so you get that immediate feedback, so you know straight away where you need to focus your attention. And also, we wanted to make sure that it was incredibly transparent. So if you do get the results of a review and inspection in your area, you have an immediate understanding of what that is. So you know, if you know what is wrong, you know what you need to do to fix it. And you could not only see the results in your area, but most importantly, you could see the results across the entire organization, which meant that if you had an issue, you could see who had already resolved it. So you could go and ask them and say, you've already tackled this issue. Can you show me what you did so I can incorporate that in my area? And it really starts to promote that best practice sharing. And we also have no limitation on users. So we never wanted to stop anyone in the organization from being able to be part of understanding quality and being able to use it to see quality. Next slide, please. So we've now implemented Perfect Ward in almost 80 organizations, predominantly in the UK and in the NHS or public sector organizations, but we're also starting to branch out. We have it up and running in Australia and South Africa, and hopefully we'll have more countries coming on board soon. And we have over 30,000 users conducting over 50,000 inspections every month. And we've been going probably for about 6 years now. And we noticed that by creating this really transparent, easy to use system, the biggest benefit that nurses fed back to us was not really the time saving, which there was, or even really the ability to understand quality, which there was. It was a tool that really helped empower them so that they were able to own quality in their own area and use this as a tool to sort of drive change. And we've seen this so many times across our customers, is that by embracing this and owning this and helping to refine it, helping to be part of the conversation about how it's utilized within the organization, they really are change agents throughout the organization. So the learning I guess I get out of this, and I'd like to share with you, is really involve the users at every single step of the way. We continue to listen to them all the time. So I talk to customers all the time about what's working, what's not working, where they have ongoing issues, and make sure that whatever we do, we're always mindful of what's going to be of value to them. And the final thing, I think that I'll just say, I was just reading, catching up on the news this morning, and I saw a report that was out by iGov and BT, and they were looking at barriers to accelerating digital transformation. And one of their stats came out, which I thought was really interesting. The number one issue is obviously cost, and in publicly funded organizations, cost is often a great big barrier to implementing digital change. But number two in there was the cultural resistance to change. And 63% of participants said that this was a barrier to accelerating digital transformation. So I think if you can get a tool that really is very inclusive, you can start to change that, that belief that the change is going to be supported by the staff and break down the barriers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that. I encourage everyone in the audience to use that tool known as Google. Other search engines are available, of course, to check out Perfect Ward, to give you some inspiration of a successful digital business, all really, really interesting stuff we're hearing today. We're moving really quickly through our speakers, cramming in some great information. Hopefully we're giving you plenty to think about. So keeping up the pace, we move straight across the water to Atlanta, Georgia, where Rose Hayes is Director of Engagement at Nell Hodgson Woodruff School of Nursing within Emory University. She says that if you want to change the world, you have to start with data, or data. Oops, hold on a second. I lost something there. I'm back with you. Hopefully you can hear me, highlighting the importance of having a digitally enabled nursing workforce that actively engages with data rather than shies away from it. I hand over to you, Rose, to talk more on that topic and to introduce us to the intriguingly named Project Nell.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm having some technical difficulties this morning, so I'm coming to you without camera, but I think the presentation will hold up okay. Like Nick said, my name is Rose, and I'm Director of Engagement at Emory School of Nursing, and I'm here to talk about the meaning of data-driven nursing leadership and share our school's journey in creating a suite of applications to not only give nurses access to big data, but also to the educational tools and training that they need to use it and use it precisely. So what is big data and why should you care? I'll skip the jargon on the left in the interest of time and say big data basically refers to these astronomical data sets that come from our never-ending use of devices, cell phones, electronic health records, etc. And when you take all of that data together, it gives you the power to step outside of your worldview and see what's happening across systems. In our case, to see what's happening across health systems. And you should care about this because with access to big data, nurses can gather the insights they need to inform solutions, processes, etc., that are precise and sustainable because they're grounded in the reality of what's happening across healthcare today. And whenever there are big problems in healthcare, smart leaders start by asking nurses and midwives how to fix them, because nurses are the largest healthcare workforce. We work with patients and families in every setting, and we spend the most time with people of all the health professions. And so if you can combine that level of exposure and insight and wisdom about the day-to-day realities of healthcare with big data, the results really can be transformative for the system. But the reality is that most nurse-led and midwife-led solutions never leave the dreaming phase. People often don't ask nurses how they would fix problems. And when nurses and midwives do come up with transformative ideas, they're often handed over to others to patent and implement. Because of many challenges, the ones listed here, which we won't go into because of time, and the fact that most nurses are working with limited data, limited time and funds, trying to keep people alive, doing everything they can just to keep people alive right now. And they often don't have a roadmap or a toolkit for how to change the system. But it doesn't have to be this way. At Emory, we believe that we can create the tools and resources that nurses need to lead patients and colleagues into the 21st century. Where these roadmaps and toolkits for innovation don't exist, we're doing everything we can to create them. And because we're keeping this to 5 minutes, I'll just hone in on one example, and that is Project Nell. And Nell is really at the heart of our mission to create a digitally enabled workforce of nurse disruptors. Because if you want to affect real change in healthcare, you have to start with data. So what is Nell? Nell is a suite of applications for teaching and practicing data-driven nursing leadership. It includes a searchable big data repository with vast health records data, but importantly, it's not just data. It contains learning and teaching apps like a series of e-courses and a data dictionary and other features, so that you can not just have access to the data, but know how to use it. So you can log into the Nell portal from your computer and use it to measure and show nursing's impact on health systems, explore nursing sensitive data among other types, and much more. It now includes 37 trillion data points, and it's continuously growing. And those data come from across Emory's vast health network. So all different care settings, populations, et cetera, across the state of Georgia. We are right now in the midst of national beta launch here in the US. At the moment, Nell is not broadly available outside the US, but our plan is that it will be in years to come. And the way we get there is through partnerships and global allies. So if you are interested in bringing this type of resource to your organization or your country, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we know that we can't do this type of work alone. If we're going to grow, we have to do it with partners and allies. So we have done a lot of work studying nurses' uptake and success in using data science. We don't have a ton of time to go into outcomes and case studies, but I do want to share one example to show what's possible when you give nurses access to this level of data. So Amebet was an Emory, Ethiopia PhD in nursing student. So she was taking courses across Emory and Addis Ababa University. She used Nell to see which factors were most likely to predict death among patients with pressure ulcers. So she looked at race, age, gender, and comorbid diagnoses, and she found that dementia and malnutrition were clinically significant predictors of death for these patients, which she was then able to leverage to improve care for her patients. On the next slide, we have a word from her about what working with Nell meant to her personally and what she believes it can mean for other students.
Hi, my name is Mevit from Ethiopia. I'm a PhD student at Addis Ababa.
Oh, seems we're having some bandwidth problems. So when we send out the slides at the end, if you all are interested, you can hear her testimonial. It's very short. I'll stop there. If anyone would like to learn more, see a demo, or partner with us, please don't hesitate to reach out at projectnell@emory.edu, or connect with me directly at rkhayes@emory.edu. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks for introducing us to Nell and the importance of data working with us and the interaction that needs to be between nurses and data. We look forward to meeting Nell around the world in the future, I'm sure. Rose mentioned people don't often ask nurses for inputs. Well, we're definitely asking nurses to take part in the Nursing Now Challenge Global Solutions Initiative on the topic we're focusing on today. So please do get involved. We've got young nurses and take questions from the audience. If you're watching live, please use the Q&A function rather than the chat function, the Q&A function to ask a question. So we encourage you to do that. I can see some people are already. So let's hear from an entrepreneur about making change happen. Khulud Khalil is Chief Nursing Officer and co-founder of Find a Nurse. Find a Nurse has gone from startup to success story, and in fact was showcased as a winning participant in the WISH 2020 innovation competition at the end of last year. So really pleased to have Khulud with us. Khulud, can you please talk to us about Find a Nurse and about how it's making change happen?
Hello everyone. Sure, I'm just going to keep it very simple today. I'm not going to bore you with details about our startup, and we'll keep this simple and conversational and focus on value and not numbers, because this is what matters. As Nick mentioned, I'm the co-founder and Chief Nursing Officer at Find a Nurse. Find a Nurse is an online platform that connects families in need of home care services with verified home care providers. We are based in Lebanon. We started in Lebanon in 2018 and currently are working on a scale-up plan to North America, specifically to the Canadian gateway. Find a Nurse started as a response to the struggle of nurses in Lebanon to make ends meet. When my partner and I started back in 2018, we mainly wanted to provide families with easier and more efficient access to home care while creating more job opportunities for nurses and care providers. What we found during the operations kickstart was that there was more that we could do. According to studies, 60% of home care providers are females, and most of them are prone for some form of abuse, harassment, and exploitation. And this was reflected to us in real time. Hence, our mission became to not only improve access to home care and create more job opportunities for nurses, we were focusing on creating job opportunities in healthy working conditions by providing these caregivers with the necessary knowledge and support to protect them. Now, with that being said, I would like to highlight the superior advantage nurses have when it comes to revving up and bringing the healthcare system universally into the digital age. The first highlight is that nurses are at the grassroots level when it comes to being in the healthcare system, which makes them in direct contact with every inefficiency and every problem, whether that problem is faced by the client or the system itself. The other thing is that in order to become a nurse, and I'm pretty sure all of the nurses in this event know this, to become a successful nurse, you need to be solution-based and patient-oriented. And these are huge advantages for nurses because they will make you a mobilizer, a planner first, and a mobilizer. Nurses make things happen. And that's why that is exactly what is needed to think out of the box and build a solution to any problem. And with that being said, Find a Nurse started as a small idea back in 2018. We are currently a profitable business. It was built by nurses, and it started serving nurses, and then it became more of a platform that was serving nurses and home care providers, caregivers and babysitters. And it increased so much awareness in the industry about how these types of work, the essential workers, are important, especially when COVID hit, and the importance of home care, especially that the world right now is completely changing into a stay-at-home mode. So I'd like to encourage every single nurse in this event to not be afraid to think out of the box, data and science and going to school is amazing, but in order to disrupt the healthcare system and improve it, we need to think out of the box to make the real change. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Khulud. It's always wonderful to hear nurse-led innovation in action, and great to hear that it's only since starting in 2018, it's profitable, and you're now looking to expand into North America. So best of luck with all of that. Lots of inspirational talk we've heard today. We've heard from 5 great speakers, and now it's time to hear from a panel of 6 great. And they are Sam, who joins us from Pakistan, Ariani, who joins us from Indonesia, Stefan, who's joining us from Ghana, Jessica, who's joining us from Spain, Cecilia speaking to us from Kenya, and Zipporah also speaking to us from Kenya. So great to have you all with us today. Very pleased that we're able to reach out across the world for this next session. So we've just heard from the people there. We really want to hear from your experience as people in the front line, as young nurses. If I could go through each of you and ask each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us how digital technologies are impacting on what you do, how you see digital technologies working with the care aspects of what you're doing. Just to hear your thoughts, really. So Sana, I'm going to come to you first.
Hi, thank you, Nick. Hi, everybody. This is Sana Gul. I'm live from Pakistan right now. I'm working as a community health nurse and look after the telemedicine projects in remote areas. So I manage this application known as Ilaj Asan. It's a patient application where we connect the basic health units from the rural areas of Pakistan who do not have access to consultations or consultants, or maybe even a medical officer. So what we do, we have a network of lady health visitors who are working all over Pakistan, and we train them how to use the app. We provide them with the connectivity through an NGO, and then they connect the patients at a very low cost, maybe for free sometimes, and then we connect them with the doctor here in urban area or a tertiary care facility. So as a community health nurse, I am able to coordinate between the consultant and the doctor and identify high-risk patients that needs to be moved to a care facility immediately. So this has resulted in a lower burden of admissions in a tertiary care hospital, because what we are working on as nurses on health promotion, and before the deterioration of the patient, we are able to identify the high risk or the warning signs, and there we can just coordinate through live consultations and ask the LHV or a nurse there to work on the patient with the expert advice online, and so that they do not have to move on the valleys or the mountains, because there aren't roads there aren't ambulances there, and if we move a patient, they most probably they will die on their way. So this is how, as a community health nurse, with having sort of knowledge and working with the software developers in the organization, has helped me to use the application-based data and analyze the comorbidities in an area and focus on the specialties. Being digitally enabled has also helped us to know about the data. For example, if in an area, I would say there are more cases of patients coming for psychiatric issues, so we know we have to arrange more psychiatrists for the particular village. So the application and the data has helped us to know the priority of the consultations and how many days we have to give for particular services in a village, and where there is a need of training or capacity building of LHVs, which are not so good in with the technology. So we can just raise some funds through different NGOs or government sector to bring them in the city and provide them with a workshop, hands-on practice, and then send back them to their places on how to manage the patients there. So I feel that this is one example that we are doing, and it has already made a huge impact in Pakistan in community levels. So I feel that being digitally enabled from the curriculum, if they teach us from our through our education and help us to get exchange with some universities where they teach about data sciences or AI. So as a nurse, because I'm the most closest person to the patient in the bedside, I know what are the issues with the patient, the emotional issues, the gaps in the healthcare. I can identify them better than anyone else there in the healthcare system. And if I'm aware of the utilization of the technology, I can implement that in a better way. So yeah.
Sana, this seems really key that you're obviously a practitioner, you're a nurse. And you mentioned there at one point how you are involved in the development as well with this app. Do you think that the fact that digital technologies, things are moving so quickly that you're able to change things as they go? I mean, are you noticing a change? Are you learning all the time? Are you able to actually put that back into the technology? Because, you know, people are moving online now, almost like a regular thing because of COVID, but you've been doing that anyway because of the remote communities that you serve.
So yeah, so we are learning as well. Of course, we are learning because we do not have the digital perspective in our curriculum, the 4 years degree program. So I learned everything after I graduated, and yes, but they need our input, and we are the ones who are telling them that what they need to change in the application or in the software, what sort of templates for the data they need to produce, what data is important, because the engineer or the software developer do not have any idea of the patient care, and we are the ones who are guiding them. If we know how to develop it for ourselves, or we could have a better partnership so things can move faster and it could have better implication in the patient care, because it is sometimes really difficult to make a non-medical person understand how you want the things to work. This is how it is important for the nurses and medical practitioners to know about the digital perspective and be digitally aware.
That's great. Great to hear what you're doing there, and Sana, best of luck with everything you do. Always good to see you. I'm going to move over to Indonesia, where Ariani is primed and waiting, I hope. Always hope with these things, don't you? You hope that people are there. I think I'm pretty sure she's there. So Ariani, over to you to tell us about who you are, what you do, and your experience of interacting with digital technology as a nurse.
Hi, Nick. Okay, thank you so much, and hello, everyone. My name is Ariani. I'm a nurse and a faculty member here in Indonesia at Universitas Gadjah Mada. I've been involved locally in building digital health, including developing mobile health initiatives to increase patient with MDR-TB compliance to treatment, as we know that patients with MDR-TB have to undergo treatment in a long time for minimum 6 to 12 months, and it is really struggling for them. And I and my team develop mobile apps to improve the patient's compliance. And what we experience now, interestingly, patients say that they're happy using the apps because they feel that the nurse accompanied them very close, while before this, they're really struggling in taking the medication. They experience the side effect of the medications, and they don't know, and they don't have a quick response from the healthcare providers. So with these applications, which at the beginning we were quite worried because yes, there are increasing numbers of our community using internet, smartphone, but we did not really sure if they are able to, maintain their own health with this kind of apps. But surprisingly, and we were very happy to receive their response that our patients happy to use these apps, and they feel that they have good information through these apps, because before they do not have good information about their own situation, because in this app, we provide them with visual progress of their treatment. And also in my research team, I am concerned with usability of the technology we are using here. Well, unlike maybe, I assume in a developed country, maybe it is easier, or you have quite advanced technology in supporting you in giving care to the patients. But in some other countries, like in developing countries, in my country, we are still trying to develop the technology, even the electronic health record in a hospital. Yes, we are now, there are many hospitals now using the electronic health record, but it is still, you know, at the beginnings levels of electronic health record. And when we come to the nursing care, it is, there are many homework that we need to do, because there are the interface, the features, it's not really helpful for nurses. So I, with my team, doing many research to ensure the usability of the electronic health record for nurses to use the electronic health record to improve the patient care in the hospital.
Ariane, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned the importance of patients as well. Of course, you know, this is all about increasing patient care. So that other aspects, the beyond the technology geeks, if I'm allowed to say that, I'm sure that's fine. Technology geeks love to be called geeks. Beyond them, we've got the nurses and you've got the patients. So always important to have all three of those involved in what goes on. So thanks, Ariane. I'm going to move over to Stefan in Ghana. Stefan, over to you to tell us about yourself and your relationship with digital technology.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Stefan. I'm a student nurse at the University of Ghana, currently in my final year. In 2020, July, I and my team were announced as the winners of the first Nightingale Now Nursing Now Challenge, Global Solutions Challenge. And our project was to create a nurse-led tele-neurorehabilitation platform that supports patients who have had brain injuries and they are undergoing recovery and rehabilitation. And so far, I would say we've picked three things from what we've been working on. We've realized that our project is going to support patient-centered care and also increase a reaching capacity, the reaching capacity to these patients. In Ghana, if I should paint a picture, what happens is most of the time you get the best acute stroke care, and then you go home, you may not get any follow-ups and all that unless you are, I would say, economically well and you can contact private physiotherapists, neuropsychologists, and whatnot. So what we are trying to do is to reach out to these patients and then assess their problems, assess their deficits, see how we can come in as nurses, and see how we can even bring other healthcare workers or team members on board to support these patients. As we are doing this, we're also monitoring our data. So we have an academia aspect of what we are doing. We are going to do a pre-test, post-test of our intervention to see what happened when we met the patient and what has changed after we have worked with them for a period of 6 months. The last part of our project that I believe it should come into fruition, it will project as nurses, is that it is giving all of us leadership opportunities. I would say I began by saying that I'm a nursing student in Ghana, and all the team members are also nursing students. But then here we are taking in charge, developing, I would say, a program that promotes continuity of care of patients in Ghana. When we are done and we're able to project our results, everybody would believe that this is a quite amazing nurse-led project. Nurses deserve the opportunity to be in leadership and then also develop such projects and protocols as well. So to me, that is my experience living with it. I would say digital enabled nursing would promote empowering of patient care. It will lead to monitoring of data that will help us to design care pathways for different patients with different needs. And then also, finally, it will create nurse leadership opportunities for many nurses. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefan. Congratulations on being the first winner of the Nursing Now Challenge, by the way. And it's great to hear that that made you really grasp the idea of nurses as leaders. Great to hear that, you know, even at the very start of your career, you know, it's that you already have that mindset that nurses have a leading role. Nurses as leaders is something that's kind of in your DNA now, something that's built in. So best of luck with everything you do in the future. Thanks, Stefan. Jessica, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to head to Spain. And I think that's where you are, jumping around the world. Jessica, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself. I understand that you've been involved in quite a number of digital-led projects or projects that have digital as a part of them. So if you could tell us something about what you do.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you, Nursing Now, for inviting me. And I represent the Spanish Mental Health Association, as well as the Group 40, which is a group of Spanish nurses that have been 40 years trying to, you know, impulse nursing initiatives. I started 3 years ago in a research team in Malaga, which was involved in various research projects, especially Horizon 2020, which Europeanly is, you know, kind of like the top research that you can find. And when I first joined the group, there were two different projects, well, three. One with tablets, another one with internet-based intervention, and the last one with TV sets. And I remember joining and thinking, I'm pretty sure that, you know, technology is the way. Like, I was not used to it yet, and COVID had not arrived. And we all thought that the main researcher was kind of crazy, you know, going with all these digital solutions and trying to work on them. But it was very interesting because we worked from scratch, and we were all the time involved with the technology developers. We had focus groups exploring user requirements with all the patients and their caregivers. We had feasibility and usability testing, you know, in the homes of lots of different families. And we finally had clinical trials where we assessed, you know, in quality of life and a lot of other health questionnaires, how technologies impacted our population. And suddenly COVID was here, and suddenly a research group was pioneered because we had all of these things going on. And the communication with all of these patients was suddenly so easy, and they were used to the technology. And we actually published a very interesting and important paper on digital impact during the pandemic on social isolation. So I ended up, you know, believing that technology is an amazing tool with our elders in this case. And I also, from a different perspective for mental health, I don't know all around the world, but acute units usually do not allow phone devices in mental health. And suddenly with COVID, lots of different units, since visitors, you know, family members could not come visit. There was a huge change, and suddenly, you know, technologies were allowed, and they were able to have a normal communication with the outside. And I thought, you know, this is so important that usually when you're an inpatient of any other type of unit, you know, cardiology, I don't know, anything, you usually have your phone, but in mental health, for example, you're not allowed for various reasons. But this was actually stigmatizing our patients, and I also thought it was a great opportunity. And last but not least, we're working now on big data. So when I heard Rose, I was very interested because we're interested in data concerning suicide. and how the different factors involved in suicide, and if patients have their correct follow-up, and how this prevents, you know, new episodes of self-harming and everything. If you can detect what predictors are involved, you can, you know, do prevention and save lots of lives. So that's my experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Quick question there. You were mentioning about obviously these patients in different areas in units that deal with mental health issues and older patients as well. How important has it been to create digital technologies or work with digital technologies that are really user-friendly, that are things that aren't frightening people off, you know, that they actually do find that this slightly distanced way of doing things can still be good for them to use?
I think that's a crucial question, because we assume that the target populations are all the same. But for example, elderly people, that's why we use TVs with them instead of phones. They're not used to technologies. So considering that each type of group has different types of fears or different type of physical impairments that will prevent them from using the technology is important. And in mental health, we have lots of different type of mental health problems, delusions related with they're spying me through my phone, you know, the government, whatever. So it's important also, you know, to think how we think technology may be for everyone, but we have to, you know, study every case and each individualized person so that what we, you know, the technology we're offering is targeted for that special group.
Thanks for your insights there. Really fascinating to hear. Thanks so much, Jessica. I see that Cecilia has been waiting patiently to speak, so I'm going to hand over to Cecilia, who I believe is in Kenya. So from Spain to Kenya. Cecilia, over to you. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Cecilia Ndongo. I'm a registered nurse in Kenya, and I'm excited to have been part of a very innovative approach during COVID-19 to manage our patients in mental health. The health association, professional associations came up with a project that set up a call center. This call center provides psychological support that is through telehealth, whereby we are able to give therapy to the nurses, the doctors, all the healthcare providers, and especially when COVID set in, we had so much tendencies of burnout, and so the call center was able to assist the healthcare providers to debrief, to also give us what is happening on the ground. We reached through them or through the phones. We were able to also to get what best we can help them through technology. We could do video conferencing with the healthcare providers through CMEs, and also we also do mental health webinar series, and these are frequent series every week to assist the healthcare providers to tackle issues dealing or prevailing with mental wellness. And so every week we have topics that we're able to tackle to the healthcare providers. It's an interactive session. And so nurses have been a major player in this project, as it's hosted by National Nurses Association of Kenya, which is coordinates the call center. And this call center so far has registered nurses as the major callers through the calling. And so nurses as the majority of the healthcare providers have been able to get assistance. Also expanded further to assist the families, because we realize these nurses are not able to call in. You know, when one has depression, they tend to sort of segregate themselves. And so we are able to get through to the healthcare providers through their families, and this has really worked out. And so we also plan to diversify and find other digital solutions which can assist the healthcare providers to tackle and also assist the patients. And also I've been involved with various hackathons, and these are innovative approaches whereby one has an idea and then you're able to pitch it and you brainstorm to bring a product which will assist in patient care approach. And so it's a great opportunity for nursing now to provide this platform for the nurses to be able to build or make their ideas come into reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Cecilia. Thanks for sharing that and your experience there in Kenya. I hope people were able to hear what Cecilia stay in and go over to Zipporah, who is also joining us from there to share her experience. Zipporah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope
Great.
You can hear me as well.
We can, thank you.
Okay, I first want to say that it's such an honor to be on this platform again with Unique and other young leaders. My name is Zipporah Ijegi. I'm a young nurse in Kenya. I'm currently an intern at one of the government facilities, but that internship concludes in October. And I'm also the vice chairperson for the Kenya Students and Novice Nurses. Our mandate as KESNA, Kenya Students and Novice Nurses, is to deal directly with students and offer them mentorship and leadership development courses, just to see that they are empowered, even from their training period, even as they venture into the professional world. And I think we also help them through that journey of transition from school, through internship, into now them being fully licensed nurses and joining the professional world. I think when COVID began, before that, a lot of our programs were physical programs with students in different institutions. And so we'd go through their faculties just to organize sessions with them, visit them at their schools, have conversations with them about what they think nursing is and what their role is in improving health. And then COVID came and schools were closed, and that was difficult to do. So for a minute, it was really scary because we're wondering how then do we continue carrying out this conversation to ensure that even amidst COVID, we are still empowering young nurses to have a voice in healthcare. And I think from then on now, we started offering like webinar series for them. And we actually had one platform where we took representatives from different countries in Africa, just young nurses, and had a conversation on how they've been able to be advocates for change, and also inviting students in our country to join in such platforms. And I think that was really wonderful that we were able to reach to our students even amidst COVID. And I think one of our major achievements during that period was seeing some of our beneficiaries, so to speak, approach us and tell us, hey, I'm in my home county. I have seen this and this problem. I would like to start this project and I would like your support. And so through the year 2020 and even now 2021 up to where we have been, we have seen young nurses come up with these wonderful projects to improve their communities. And they have requested us to support them through that. And, we have been able to offer support for some digitally, and for others, we have had to, visit their communities and see how we can help one another. And I think it was just wonderful to know that even when we are not able to meet together as nurses in Kenya, then through the digital platforms, we are able to come together and think around how we can improve our societies, and help each other through that journey. And I think we were also able to be able to lobby for young nurses to get posted for jobs and internships, particularly when COVID began. There were a lot of us who had just finished school and had not been, posted for internships. And because that is a mandatory step after school in my country. And so we brought a pool of young nurses and caused havoc, sorry, so to speak, on Twitter. And I think we traded for around 3 days straight. And then we got the government to listen. And I really like that one of the presenters, Hannah, said that smart leaders, begin by asking nurses, what do we do to improve healthcare? And I think through that, then and also leveraging on the social platforms and the social community that we have built, we have been able to see us also be able to continue mentoring these students, continue reaching them and linking them up to leaders and mentors through their journey, and also work with young nurses to improve their different communities. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zipporah. Really great to hear from you. Thank you to all the young nurses there who spoke, Sana, Ariane, Stefan, Jessica, Cecilia, and then just Zipporah as well. We've got a little bit of time for a few questions, and some questions have been coming in. I'm going to put one to Richard, our first speaker, which comes from Tende. Do you think digital literacy should be a core component of nurse education?
That's a great question. Digital literacy is one of those topics that become essentially core. It's foundational. Without it, you can't really participate in the future. And I think we see that in lots of social situations above and beyond healthcare. And I think that's slowly taking care of itself. But digital literacy comes in a number of different angles, from computer abilities, usage, all the way up to information literacy. Because the majority of stuff that you click on a computer nowadays has been manipulated for you in good and bad ways. So digital literacy, to understand that information is no longer static, and there's a lot of things in the background that massage and manipulate information so you see what it thinks you want to see. So that's a whole other kind of continuum of literacy that is sometimes not even mentioned in nursing education. The fact that information itself is no longer just static and derived from evidence-based sources and research. It's manipulated in real time by things that are above and beyond our abilities to even see. So I think digital literacy is a way more dynamic concept and is foundational to, and that's where I honestly suggest you start with this entire topic. If you don't have that grounding, understanding cognitive technologies and the impact of such is going to be very difficult. Hope that helps.
I think it does. Thank you. Thanks for that, Richard. How about Hannah? Why not answer Hannah? A question here from Edward Halloran. Are there standard terms that can be used by nurses anywhere in the world to summarize the nurse-patient assignment for communication with patients, nurses, doctors, hospitals, health systems, and governments? You spoke to us from a frontline perspective. Do you think there are standard terms that can be used, should be used?
Yes, I do, but off the top of my head, I can't think what they would be. And I think it comes back to this this digital literacy question, in that this is clearly something that is happening at pace, and it is clearly outpacing the research that is being done on it. And therefore, it's really important that we are all speaking from a singular terminology, so that we're able to come together as one, as an entire profession globally, in order to discuss digital technologies. What is the expectation in practice? What is the expectation with nursing? And I think that's a really important question, and it's about us thinking about how we can start that conversation so that we can make these terminologies so that we can have all of the same terminologies, and we can start looking at the evidence and how that is impacting. This is definitely something that is going to continue, and it is happening at pace. And yeah, I think that's a really great start.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, we're definitely all linked globally now. There's no doubt, as we can see from this session. So yeah, having some consistency there would be rather helpful. A question now from Abdullahi, sorry, who asks, does digital technology offer a solution for high visibility need in future ICU settings? I don't know if anybody feels comfortable putting their hand up for that. give you a second before I jump in and throw it to Rose. Rose, would you be able to answer that, do you think?
Does digital technology offer a solution for high visibility need in future ICU settings?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the question fully, but I can tell you what comes to mind, and maybe if it's consistent with what you're asking about, Abdullah, you can tell me or clarify. But something that we're looking at closely at Emory, and some of our researchers are working with others at the University of Virginia to look at, is the use of big data as the foundation for other tools and technologies that can help to streamline processes in ICUs. So one example is using artificial intelligence in the ICU, predictive analytics, to see what's going to happen, what the high probability of an outcome is, especially in neonatal settings. So kind of using real-time data to say, with these factors at play, we can predict within the next half an hour or hour, XYZ will happen. And with that knowledge, you can prevent it from happening. The other thing that we're doing is our scientists are taking Project Nell, the project that I spoke about in my presentation, and using the infrastructure of Project Nell to build something else called Project Conquer. And what Project Conquer is it's an artificial intelligence voice assistant for nurses. It's kind of like Alexa for nurses. And so the idea being that with this voice assistant, you can do a whole range of things, from charting on the go to gaining some of those real-time predictive insights that I just mentioned, to asking questions like, what's the likelihood of, you know, if my patient is over 65 and I give them morphine, what's the likelihood of them falling? Things like that. And so you can use a kind of data and digital technologies, I guess, as the foundation to create these nurse-led, nurse-centered solutions to hopefully meet the increasing demands of ICU settings in the future. And if I'm off with that, let me know, but that's just what comes to mind from our part of the world over here at Emory.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Well, while I've got you on there, I'm going to actually ask you the last question, which is, before we kind of wind up today, which is, you go bigger in your talk, and the question is, how do you manage the ethical issues such as data protection, managing patient expectations, any litigation on digital versus face-to-face consultation? Actually, looking at that, it's kind of not just big data, it's looking at all data, particularly personal data. I suppose the difference with big data is that it isn't the personal data. So actually this is asking more about personal data.
Yeah, this question is so important. Thank you for asking this. It's something that we think about on a few different fronts. When it comes to protecting patients' privacy, we have several layers of protections in place, from the fact that the hospital de-identifies the data before it even comes to us for use in research or implementation in Project Nell, to the fact that, at least in the US, there are pretty substantive regulations in place for when you're using patient data for research and other purposes, there's specific information that has to be withdrawn from it, so that there's not a statistical probability of somebody being able to backtrack with different pieces of the puzzle and figure out who someone is. So we follow those regulations very carefully. We work with our hospital system, our business partners, to make sure that patient privacy is prioritized. This is a big question. There's a lot of different ways we can go with it, but I'll go to the ethics part of the question next. Ethics and representation. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and representation is really important with big data. And there's been studies that have shown that when you don't have scientists from diverse perspectives working on the data sets, working on the artificial intelligence solutions, that you can wind up really easily with bias in these tools and technologies. And one example of that, just one small example, there's so many, is the fact that many health systems don't capture information on whether somebody is undocumented, an undocumented immigrant. There's bias in questions about professions. So sex workers are often not represented in data sets. So there are all of these populations who have very real health needs, nuanced, complicated needs. And if you're not asking the right questions with the data from the get-go, you can miss them entirely. And if you're missing them entirely with with what you're representing in the data, how can you create solutions that respect them and include them and are precise and sustainable? And so we take different tactics to try to make sure that we meet those ethical needs, and we are representing groups that should be represented by working with diverse community stakeholders, really working with people of all levels, so including frontline nurse perspectives. We just have a laundry list of partners that we collaborate on projects with. In Atlanta especially, we work a lot with Black moms and babies who are at high risk for poor outcomes. So when we're creating data sets with them, we're including the Center for Black Women's Wellness, Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and many others to make sure that not only is the research appropriate and ethical, but the data and the tools that are informing it are precise. And I'll stop there. There's so much we could talk about, but thank you for that question.
Thanks, Rose. I did say that was the last question, but I see we've got 2 minutes, so I'm going to hand those over to Khulud and to Karen to answer the question. So we've kind of got a minute each. It's kind of a real snapshot thing here. How can we make sure, this is from Matt Jennings, how can we make sure that digital technologies enhance person-centered care relationships, particularly in relation to communication, rather than reinforcing more task-based and mechanistic approaches to nursing? So all about patient care. Khulud?
Yeah, thank you for the brilliant question. I think it's really important to keep in mind that when we're digitizing any sort of task or any sort of work in the nursing sector, it is meant to take that time spent by the nurse doing those documentations or doing those repetitive tasks so that she could have more time with the patient. The goal is always to keep the practice patient-centered and client-centered, but rather make it to just create less documentation, make it more efficient, make it less prone to mistakes and stuff like that.
Thanks, Khulud. And final word to you, Karen.
Thank you. I think I'll give you an example of how I've seen this work in practice. So one of our customers actually utilizes patient volunteers, so people who were patients who are now volunteer at the organizations, and they do the inspections and reviews. So they cast everything from a perspective of the patient, and they bring a different voice, and then we can look at the sort of responses to that and build it into the processes and the environment of care that patients are in, and build it back into the tool, if you like. So I think for us, it's making sure that you don't forget, the service users, the patients, and you get their input into the tool, and hopefully get them using the tools as well.
Great, thanks, Karen. Our time is up. Patient-centered care, nurses at the forefront, digital technology working with us, making the most of it to allow nurses to be the leaders, the caregivers, all the things we know that nurses are. Really been inspiring to hear from everybody today. So thank you so much for being part of this. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for all the speakers. Do get involved in this Nursing Now challenge, nursingnow.org. We are offering $1,000 to help develop the challenge and the chance to present in Doha next year, fly to Doha, COVID permitting. We thank you so much for everything that you've given to this today. We're done. Thanks, and thanks everyone. Goodbye.